fine. Hi, welcome to Say with Tammy. And I'm Tammy. And I have a special guest today, John Freedom. Hi, John.
Hey, Tammy.
And John's an author, counselor, and trainer in Santa Rosa, California. He serves as the executive director for FREA, and that is Finding Recovery and Empowerment from Abuse, and research coordinator for the ACEP, and that's the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. And John serves as the editorial board for the International Journal of Healing and Caring and the Energy Psychology Journal, the author of Heal Yourself with Emotional Freedom Technique, and he leads seminars throughout the U.S. and Europe. And welcome, John.
Hi, Tammy. Glad to be here.
And I'm going to pass your email and all that good stuff at the end. But so let's ask, what is EFT?
Okay. No, thank you. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's a relatively new method for rapidly resolving emotional distress and trauma, and that is done by tapping on acupressure points. So most forms of therapy, as you know, are talk therapy, and basically you talk and you analyze and you reframe or you challenge misguided assumptions, okay? Whereas EFT is a tapping technique rather than a talking technique.
You must get really good results. I was going to say, what could it be used for?
Okay, yeah. So right now, what's amazing about EFT has actually become a popular movement. It is sometimes called the people's therapy because this is a simple self-healing, self-empowerment tool that people can do for themselves. And Tammy, right now, it's no exaggeration to say that thousands of people around the world are tapping on themselves to relieve aches and pains, fears and phobias, anxiety and depression, trauma and PTSD, and all kinds of negative, emotional distress of different kinds. And as I mentioned before, EFT is sometimes called the people's therapy because this is a self-healing technique that people can do by and for themselves.
So basically, like you're saying, if somebody has a PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder for whatever reason, childhood war, what have you, tapping on certain points can make this person feel better.
Yeah, so it can actually alleviate the distress associated with trauma and PTSD, okay? But more importantly, it can actually resolve very painful memories and experiences, okay? Now, having said that, I need to back up a little bit and just say that for people who are new to this, when you're first working on yourself, it is best to begin with very small, beginning traumas. There's small T traumas, which are, average everyday traumas like we had, like, for example, falling out of a tree maybe, okay, as a child, or, our parents yelling at us, okay, as opposed to, big T, capital major, major trauma, major PTSD. And so while EFT can be used for that, it is best if you're working with yourself to begin with, small little T traumas. And then also if you're something who, has real PTSD, it may be best to consult a practitioner or a therapist who will help you work through this.
Sounds really good. Sounds like, a great form of healing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about, I hear you wrote a book on EFT titled Heal Yourself with the Emotional Freedom Technique. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Okay. So yes, so as you mentioned, I am the author, and this is the book here, Heal Yourself with Emotional Freedom Technique. And let me share with you the backstory behind this book. So in the summer of 2011, I got an email from an editor in the UK asking me if I would write a book about EFT. And, I get so many emails, and a lot of it are, or junk or spam or, phishing or whatever. And so I was about to hit the delete button and say, this is a joke, but thank God I didn't. And so I responded to this lady, and then we began email correspondence back and forth. And so she was an editor for a publishing company in London called Hodder and Stoughton. And so asked me if I would write a book on EFT. And to be honest, I didn't say no. I didn't say yes right away. I really thought about it because, first of all, there are a lot of books on EFT out there already. And also, I have a relationship with Gary Craig, who's the man who developed EFT, and I did not want to offend him, okay, by writing yet another book about EFT, okay. But then I thought about it, and I realized that not only would it be good for my career, but also I had a few things to say because I've been teaching EFT for a long time. It'd be useful for me to put, my personal viewpoint out there, okay? So finally, but with great reluctance, I decided to write this book. So after a couple months of dialogue and back and forth, she sent me a contract, okay? And the contract was one of these standard publishing contracts. It's 12 pages of fine print, basically sign all your rights away and, they own the book and all that, okay? And so this is my first book, and I said, sure, whatever. I just signed it, sent it back to them. And then a couple weeks later, just before Christmas, I get this letter, I get a check in the mail, I get an advance, and they say, hey, this is getting interesting here, okay? And so, so that was really neat. But to be honest, I still was not committed to writing the book, even though I'd signed a contract. I still was not committed to writing the book. So I took the check and I scotch taped it to the window over my desk where I could look at it. I didn't want to jump into this too quickly, you realize, okay? So where I could look at it every day. And it sat there for, a couple months. And then finally, after a couple months, I had some big bills come in, and I was thinking to myself, damn, where am I going to get the money to pay these bills? And then suddenly it really, hey, there's this check that's been sitting here, okay? So I took the check, went to the bank, deposited it, went through, paid off my bills, and, hey, that was pretty good free money, and feeling pretty good about that. And then 2 days later, one morning, I woke up, and then I said to myself, shit, now I have to write that damn book. Okay, so anyway, to be honest, I thought about it. I did write an outline. I wrote an outline, and I did write a table of chapters, table of contents. Okay, and we had set a deadline of August of 2012 for me to finish the book. And every year we have ACEP, which you mentioned, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, has an annual conference that I coordinate the research conference for, research symposium. Okay, and so. I was busy with, the symposium with my clients and whatnot. And so finally, starts to come, it's 2 weeks before the deadline, August 1st. And then I realized I'd hardly done any work on it at all. It was nowhere near as ready. And partly I was afraid of, not even doing anything, but I realized I better be responsible about this. So I sent her an email and I said, look, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten it done. Please forgive me, okay? And so the editor writes back to me and she says, okay, she says, when could you have it done for? Mm-hmm. But then I said, shit, the ball's back in my court. What do I do now? Okay. But then I realized that, the universe was handing me a golden opportunity and I really shouldn't blow this. Okay. And so, so I thought about it. And by this time it was about September of 2012. So I thought, okay, September, October, November, December, January. So it's about a little bit less than 4 months. So I gave myself 4 months. I said, okay, I'll have it done by January 1st, 2013. Okay. And she said, okay. And then, that was that. And so but then of course I realized that I really needed to, and to let you know, I'm a decent writer, but I'm not a fast writer. Okay. And so I realized I really needed to get my butt in gear in order to get this done by the January 1st deadline. And so every day what I did was I would get up in the morning, make myself a cup of coffee. I would, turn off Facebook and turn off my cell phone, turn off all distractions. And I would sit and I would do some tapping with myself. And so I would tap on things like, even though I really don't want to write this book, even though I feel afraid that it will never meet other people's expectations, my editor's expectations, let alone my expectations, even though I'm angry with myself for ever agreeing to what the hell was I thinking, that kind of thing, I still love and accept myself and I embrace myself with this process, okay? And so I would do some tapping on it and tell me what happened was inevitably within 4, 5, 6 minutes, the creative juice, the creative gears would start whirling around and I'd say, oh, here's a thought. Here's how I could do this chapter. Oh, here's this conversation here where I could put this diagram. And it all just started coming together, and I would have to actually stop doing the tapping, go to my computer and start typing away. And so every time I got stuck, which was, to be honest, almost every day, but anytime I got stuck and didn't know what to do, I would stop, do some tapping with it. It would free things up. And the amazing thing about this, the miracle of this, is that I actually made that deadline of January 1st. And believe me, I hate deadlines. I don't do deadlines in my life, and I actually made that deadline.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes, and quite frankly, this book would never have been written if I had not known about tapping. If I hadn't been able to tap every day on it.
See, you're able to utilize it. That's great. I love that. And what a great motivator with that checkup on the window there where you can see it every day. Yeah, that's really wonderful.
Well, there's an old phrase, of course, that says, physician, heal thyself. And the proof of any technique or any therapy is, can you apply it yourself? And does it work for you? Does it, of course, you can say, oh, it's so great and so wonderful, it works for other people. But can you, when the rubber hits the road and things get really difficult, can I apply this to myself and my own issues? And in my case with EFT, I can definitely say yes to that.
Yeah, that's great, because a lot of people can get a lot of use out of your book, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's really good to hear. When was the date again? January 1st?
Well, that's when I finished the book, yes.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, and then it was published in June of 2013.
Yeah, because that's a whole nother, let's say, can of worms, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So that was about.
It's a different process.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, can you give our audience a live experience here of tapping?
Sure. Okay. So, Tammy, how about if I guide you through this, and why don't you think of an upset, something, and actually the wonderful thing about this is that you don't even have to tell us what it is, but think of an upset that happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, something that really rattled your cage or got you upset. Okay. And let me know when you got that.
I think of something. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, you don't have to tell us what it is, but tell me the emotion that it stirred up in you, whether it's anger, resentment, or irritation, or overwhelm.
Let's say irritation.
Irritation. Okay. All right. And this was this irritation with another person?
Trying to think. No.
Okay. All right. Irritation with what?
Oh, with what? Oh, sometimes just change, Just
irritation with change.
Within.
Okay. All right. And if you were to rate this on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no feeling at all and 10 being overwhelming, what number would that be?
7.
7. Okay. All right. And you're willing to release this and let this go?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So take your hands like this, rub your hands together. Like you're preparing for something important. Okay, good. And now there's an acupressure point on the side of the hand right here. They call this the karate chop spot, like where you make a karate chop. And just tapping here. And then I'm going to say, and I want you to repeat this after me. So say something like, even though I have this irritation.
Even though I have this irritation.
And even though I don't want it or need it.
And even though I don't want it or need it.
Okay. I still love and embrace myself where I'm at anyway.
And I still love and embrace myself no matter where I am anyway.
Right. So even though I had this irritation.
Even though I have this irritation.
And it really rattled my cage.
And it really rattled my cage.
And I wish I didn't have it.
I wish I didn't have it.
I know that irritations happen.
I know that irritations happen.
And I'm learning to love and embrace and respect myself where I'm at.
And I'm learning to love and embrace myself where I'm at.
So there.
So there.
Okay. So now we're going to tap a series of points. So, but the trick to doing this is gently think about what happened, okay? And think and feel the irritation in your body. And let me know when you got that.
Okay.
Okay, got it? So you're going to tap here. You just tap between the eyebrows, this irritation.
Irritation.
Now there's 2 points on the side of the eyes. Right here on the side, there's a bone there. So right on the side of the temple, I'm tapping here. And tapping below the eyes on the bone, that bony bridge below the eyes. And tapping right here below the nose, and gently breathing and noticing. And tapping on the chin. And these are all acupressure points, and these are all very psychoactive. And take your 2 hands, tapping right below the collarbone. You know, there's bony knobs of the collarbone, so right below there's 2 bony knobs. Okay. And then tap under one arm. This is about 4 or 5 inches below the armpit on the seam of your shirt, okay, or blouse. And then tapping into the other arm. Okay, and take the flat of your hands and tap the side of your ribs. Okay, and then shake yourself out. Give yourself a good shake.
Shake, shake, shake.
Shake, shake, shake. Yes,
shake,
good.
shake.
Okay. All right. And what do you notice?
Feeling better already.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Shift.
Yeah, so that's a quick demonstration, but it's what this
And I
is,
didn't even need that 1 hour workout then.
right. But what this is really useful is, you know, every day, you know, we have stress. You know, we all know what stress is, and people push our buttons, there are irritations, and every day we have the upset or crisis du jour. You know, and then a lot of times we come home, and then, you know, we may either, you know, a lot of people will either drink or drug or do something to, you know, wind themselves down, okay? Or else we, you know, may take it out on our partner or, you know, our animals or something, okay? And so it's best to, you know, if we have some kind of upset like this, just notice that, and tapping is a simple method that we can use to rapidly release and diffuse any upset in the moment. And then so that we can be this, you know, the calm, loving, you know, compassionate people that, you know, we know that we truly are inside.
And if it was an example with another person, then you would just utilize the words differently, right?
Yeah, but the essential thing is that you're just basically using words of, you know, love and acceptance, saying that I accept myself even though I had this upset, or I accept myself even though, you know, for example, I had this irritation.
And I love all these pressure points. They're so important to remember.
Yeah. There was a psychologist named Dr. Carl Rogers who talked a lot about you know, positive self-regard and positive self-esteem. But one of the things that he said was that you know, it's kind of paradoxical, but the more you resist yourself, the more you are unwilling to accept yourself, the more you keep yourself stuck. Whereas conversely, to the degree that you accept yourself, even if it's, you know, you're doing some kind of really negative behavior, you know, like I said, drinking or drugging or whatever, but if you can accept yourself as you are, then it's actually easier to change.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard that EFT is being used for psychosomatic conditions. Can you please give an example of that?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you know, I've taught EFT all over, you know, the United States and in Europe. So several years ago, I was teaching at a school in Albuquerque, and this was a hypnotherapy school, and the director of the school asked me if I'd be willing to do a demonstration with someone. And so I said yes, and I did not know anything. I'd never met this woman, did not know anything about her, and the only thing I knew about her in advance was the director said, this lady has a lot of problems. Okay. And of course, with a description like that, I mean, she could have been psychotic for all I knew. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I said yes. Okay. So she came in, and when she to do this demonstration in front of a group, about eight people or so, she would not even look at me, not even make eye contact. Okay. And so she had several issues I asked her, but they include anxiety and depression, but she also mentioned eczema. Okay. And so I asked her to focus on the eczema, not because I thought that I could cure eczema, but because very often with physical symptoms, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you get immediate feedback. Okay. And it would be a good demonstration to see whether this was, working or not. Okay. And so anyway, I began working with her, and I asked her, so we did some initial tapping. We did 3 or 4 rounds of tapping, and her discomfort decreased a little bit, not very much. Okay. And then so I said to her, I said, when you experience this eczema, and I said, what are the symptoms of it? And she said, my skin gets very hot, and it feels like okay, I'm blocking on it right now. It feels like I've got to get out of here. Okay. Like I can't stand this. Okay. And so I said to her, so when you have this symptom, about how old do you feel? And she said 15. And I said, what was going on in your life when you were 15, about that time? Okay. And she thought a moment, and then she started sobbing, and had to wait 2 or 3 minutes for her to calm down. And finally she said, when I was 15, my mother was an alcoholic. My mother and my brother were fighting. My brother committed suicide, and I blame myself for it. Okay.
Wow. Heavy burden.
Right. So there it was right there. But associated with this was this belief that, she said that talking about her home life, she said, I never knew when a fight was going to break out. And previous to this, she had said to me, I never know. She said she stayed at home a lot because she never knew when her skin was going to break out. Okay. So there was this connection about things breaking out. So anyway, I began doing some tapping with her, and tap with her for maybe about, 45 minutes or maybe an hour, on, her mom drinking and the suicide and blaming herself and things breaking out, and et cetera. Okay. But by the time we finished, she was calm. She was more relaxed. She was making eye contact, looking me in the eye and looking the people in the eye and that kind of thing. She was feeling much better. And, with difficult cases like this, it does not always work right, right in the first experience of tapping. So I asked one of the, other students to work with her, and she worked with her another couple of times. But after the 3 sessions, she reported back to me, and she said that her eczema had cleared up by 95%.
Wow. Wow, okay. That's really fantastic.
Yeah. And of course, you probably know that the medical treatment for eczema is steroid cream. Okay, which can mask the symptoms, but it does not really cure it or address it.
True, it's not getting to the root of the problem.
Not getting to the root of the problem. Whereas in this case, it was very obvious, very clear that her fear and her guilt about her skin breaking out was related to this fear of things breaking out at home, and then we were able to address that with the tapping.
Great story. I like that. Yes. Thank you. What about EFT and sports?
Yeah. So actually, a number of athletes are using EFT for sports. I have a colleague named Greg Warburton, who's a coach up in Corvallis, Oregon, who has worked with the OSU Beavers, I believe is the name of the team, but the Oregon State University. And he coached them to the U.S. Collegiate World Series in 2007, 2008. And then again, I believe a couple of years ago, okay? But he's worked with a lot of athletes. And this is good, especially for any kind of sport that involves concentration, like for example, golf. But to give you an idea, several years ago, I was working with this lady, and she was actually an amazing athlete, but her sport was women's archery. And to be honest, I knew nothing about women's archery, but she had reached this plateau where she wasn't, doing very well. So I asked her what was going on. And so she said that in women's archery, what happens is that the women line up in a queue, one woman at a time, and then one woman steps forward and, in front of the target, and then, aims and pulls the bow back and then lets go, okay? And her problem was that she was rushing her shots. And so I asked her, why was she rushing her shots? And she said, I shouldn't keep the other ladies waiting, okay? So again, we did 2-3 rounds of tapping on it. The anxiety, the distress came down a little bit, but not very much. And so she said, like I said, I shouldn't keep the other ladies waiting. So then I said to her, when you were a little girl, who told you that you should not keep people waiting? And again, she thought about it, and then she got really upset, and she said, it was my stepdad. He was always rushing me. He was always telling me that I shouldn't keep people waiting, okay? So anyway, then we tapped for about 30 minutes on stepfather trauma and this belief that she couldn't keep people waiting. And then Tammy, at one point she said, and I did not suggest this to her, I did not reframe this to her, she came up with this herself. She said, instead of keeping people waiting, she said, I'm a sweet lady and I can take my sweet time, okay?
I like that.
Yeah. And so anyway, and she tapped on that and feeling more relaxed about it. And then she began taking her sweet time, and it shot her performance up to a whole nother level, because she wasn't rushing herself anymore. So that's an example. I can give you other example, but that's an example of how you can use EFT with sports, and actually for peak performance of any kind.
It's great to hear. So in other words, if somebody wants to just improve in whatever kind of sport, tapping is the way to go. EFT.
Well, one way. I mean, there are many methods to to improve your performance.
Yeah.
But tapping EFT is one very effective technique. And as I mentioned, a lot of elite athletes are using this for sports performance.
True. I understand that you've served as the chairman of the research committee for ACEP, the ASSN for Comprehensive Energy Psychology for the last 7 years. And has there been any research on EFT for this?
Well, actually, rather, may there have been.
What's the research? Yeah.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of research. And one of the things that in order for therapy modalities to be accepted by the APA, which is the American Psychological Association and other organizations, they need to be what's called evidence-based, which means that they need to both have, a research base of evidence, along with, acceptance and use by clinicians in the context of, client preferences and experience. Okay. So, but right now there have been approximately, well, let me put this way, there's different ways to parse this, okay? But there have been 50 what are called pre-post outcome studies and over 65 randomized controlled trials. And randomized controlled trials are the gold standard for research in the field of psychology, okay? And over 200 papers, including systematic reviews and meta-analyses, which are documenting the effectiveness of EFT for actually for 6 conditions, and specifically for anxiety, depression, phobias, trauma, and pain, chronic pain. Okay, and when I say that there is evidence for each of those conditions that I mentioned, anxiety, depression, etc., there are at least 6 different studies documenting the effectiveness for those conditions. And with all these different studies, there have been only one study that was negative, that did not show results, and that was a very poorly designed study with OCD, for example.
Okay.
But all the other studies, have shown effectiveness.
That's extraordinary.
And the research continues. I monitor research for ACEP, which is the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and every year there are anywhere between 10 and 20 new studies being published. So this is an active field. It's not something that just happened a long time ago. Every year there are still, between 10 and 20 new studies being published every year.
Love that. That's great. That's a high percentage, that's for sure. How would you explain EFT works?
Well, Tammy, that is the $64,000 question, in which everybody would like to know. Okay. So EFT is was developed by a man, actually an engineer named Gary Craig And EFT was a spin-off of something called thought field therapy, which was developed by a psychologist named Roger Callahan, okay? And the theory behind the method is that we have these, you're probably familiar with acupuncture, we have what are called acupuncture meridians, which are lines of force or lines of energy that run longitudinally up and down the body from the fingertips and from the toes and feet, up the legs, up the body, and up to the top of the head, okay? And what happens is that when we have emotional distress, one or more of these meridian channels will get blocked. And you can feel that by a feeling of pain or discomfort right in the area of the meridians, okay? And so if you take your hands and simply tap on, these are, bladder meridian points here or gallbladder points here, for example, or a governing vessel meridian point here, but you tap on these specific points, and the theory is that it relieves that blockage, restoring the free flow of energy, and along with that free flow of energy, then whatever condition, emotional condition is related to that issue shifts and releases as well, okay? So that's an energetic point of view. Now, one problem we've been having is that a lot of researchers and mainstream academics, for example, quite frankly, do not accept the meridian theory and do not believe in meridians, and they think that energy is woo-woo, okay? But for example, there was a research study that was done at Harvard University on acupuncture, and this was a 10-year study. And what they found was that when they used acupuncture, used needles on certain points, that those points they had the person connected with an fMRI, which is functional magnetic resonance imaging, okay, which scans and shows when different parts of the brain are activated. And they found that tapping on specific points, okay, would actually down-regulate the amygdala, and the amygdala is an organ, in the limbic system, the center of our brain, which is responsible for our fight or flight response. And so when we down-regulate, it actually down-regulates the amygdala. And so then when you think of a negative or traumatic memory, instead of getting all upset and overwhelmed and wanting to run away, it actually calms the amygdala, calms the nervous system. The amygdala sends out, relaxing and soothing signals down to the rest of the nervous system, okay? And then the body gets the message that, hey, it's okay, it's not a problem, it's cool, and you can chill out. And when that happens, the body relaxes instead of getting, all upset and freaked out, okay?
Just kind of like the acupuncture, except you don't, without the needles, you just do the tapping.
Yes.
Same concept, meridians.
Yes. And it's one wonderful thing about this, of course, is that, acupuncture is based on a similar principle, of course, of, stimulating these acupuncture points. But of course, to use acupuncture, of course, you have to go to an acupuncturist or someone who's trained in that modality. Okay. And acupuncture is very effective, by the way, for conditions like anxiety and depression, and sometimes for addictions, for example. Okay. But the wonderful thing about EFT is that this, as I mentioned before, this is a simple self-healing, self-empowerment tool that people can do for themselves and use when, for example, rather than wait till next Thursday when you have your appointment with your therapist, you can do it right here, right now, whenever you need it. And it goes with you, it's very portable, it goes with you wherever you have your fingertips.
So we kind of like that lady's story with the eczema, and then she doesn't, have bouts of that anymore. So that's wonderful. That article you were talking about, is that the Huffington Post one, or is that something separate?
I'm sorry, which article was I talking about?
With the Huffington Post, something about tipping point for tapping.
Oh, yes. So three, 4 years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, someone wrote an article in the Huffington Post and asked if tapping had reached a tipping point. And the idea is that with social phenomena, that at some point when the momentum for a certain thing builds up, it reaches the tipping point, and then it flows over, and then it becomes mainstream. And that's a good question. People are asking that. I would not say that tapping has become mainstream quite yet, but as I mentioned, this is being published in major psychological journals, all over the world, and also in journals like Consciousness or Self, or athletic journals. Every week I'm seeing new articles on tapping and whatnot. So it is, let's say it's on it's on the road. It's on the way towards becoming more mainstream. Yes.
Nice. And where can people find your book?
Okay. Well, the best place, actually, bookstores used to carry it, but it's a story. They said that it's out of print, which is not true, but the best place is to find it on Amazon. Just do an Amazon search for, Heal Yourself with Emotional Freedom Technique, John Freedom, and it'll come up.
Okay. And that's how, and if somebody wants to contact you directly, I'll post your email, but go ahead if you want to, or if you have a website.
Okay. So email address is research, the word research, RESEARCH, research_committee at Energy Psych, that's energypsych.org. So I'll repeat that. So it's research_committee with 2 M's and 2 T's and 2 E's, okay, at energypsych.org, okay. Or direct phone number is area code 520-241-5124.
And I love how you always post, at the bottom of your email, together we can heal the wounds of the world.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Any other last words of wisdom, wise words of wisdom?
Well, just to say that a number of years ago, for many years, psychologists believed that, for example, PTSD was incurable, okay? And people thought that they would, for example, have to live with nightmares and flashbacks or live with, chronic conditions. And so what I want to say is that I know, Tammy, that you're very familiar with, mind, body, medicine, and holistic health, but that there are many ways, and not just EFT, but there are many ways to heal ourselves, from trauma, from PTSD, from psychosomatic illnesses. And so I would invite everyone to try EFT. Just, get on the internet and do a Google search or look on YouTube for, emotional freedom technique. And of course it will come up. And if not EFT, try something else. But there are many, many, many ways to stimulate, our mind-body connection. And there are many, many ways to heal. And so I guess the takeaway message is that, there are many things, there are many ways you can heal, and EFT is one of them. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, John. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.
Yes. Okay. You take care. Thank you.
Bye.